Alrighty. First up to introduce herself is Rachel.
Thank you so much. My name is Rachel Dial, and I work with a company that's called Inventure. And what Inventure does is we partner with large multinational companies and take technologies that have been developed in-house, and then we turn them into new companies. And so Inventure has 3 portfolio companies today, all of which are in the sustainability world and all drive value through sustainable solutions. And so I worked at Inventure's first company, which was Pure Cycle Technologies, for the last 5 years, and that is a plastics recycling technology. And while I was there, I worked on what we call our Pure Zero program, which was a zero waste program for venues, sports teams, and events. It was a lot of fun. We were able to partner with organizations like the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Orlando Magic, the Cleveland Browns, and we were able to help them put in place new recycling programs and improve their existing ones. And the essence of that program is really about planning what you're going to be consuming in advance and then planning for the solutions before it's actually consumed. So I'm really looking forward to being here and learning more about your business, as well as sharing some of the nuggets that I've picked up along the way.
Cameron.
I am Cameron Gray with AMA Pro Racing, American Flat Track. Mr. Tim Frost and Dennis have been nice enough to have me the last 6 or 7 years. I've sat on different panels over the years. I handle all of the partnerships and revenue for both our series, American Flat Track, and our events company. And yeah, excited to be here working with Rachel on some new sustainability projects that we'll talk about in a minute.
Cameron's a brilliant businessman who also proved that the helmet technology he wears must be good as well. Had to get that one in there. All right, Jess.
Great. First time here. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm usually downstairs at the PRI Show, but my career has always been in fuels, making, producing, marketing, trading fuels in Houston, Texas for various oil and gas companies. However, I am a 30-year member of the SCCA, and I was raised in SCCA racing Spec Racer Renault, Spec Racer Ford, and Formula Mazda. I then moved over to the board of SCCA and was handling the membership. We brought the championship auto racing teams to Houston for an in-town track there. We doubled the size of our club at the same time. I then moved on to become regional executive for Houston region. I have a love for racing. I also have the ability to make fuels. So I'm going to talk to you today about more sustainability, and a word that you may not have heard that's going to be, you're going to be hearing from the OEMs, decarbonization. Thank you for having me.
And another man who's well invested in his safety technology, apparently. All right, the word sustainable gets thrown out there every day. And I think a lot of folks hear it and they get tired of hearing it. I'm in the ag industry as the farm director, WI2I Radio in Danville. And when you talk about sustainability to a farmer, they just kind of roll their eyes and they say, what's in it for me? But what I've learned as I've gotten more involved in sustainability, whether it's in auto racing, whether it's in whatever industry, it's all about the bottom line. It really is. And there's a wide open market right now. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about how Inventure's companies have driven value through some of the sustainable solutions you guys have created?
Absolutely. So in our model, Inventure's model, so like I mentioned earlier, we partner with large companies like Procter & Gamble, Nokia Bell Labs, and essentially what we're doing at the Topco is we're screening these technologies. So we look at probably 100 different internal R&D projects that are cultivated and managed inside of these large companies. And we only pick the best of the best that have quantifiable economic value that is able to be delivered to their customers. So we've got a team of PhDs Our process that we use to screen the technologies has been developed over the last 30 years. Our founders have founded and commercialized more than 16 companies that have gone IPO. And so that's the long way of saying this process that we use to pick which ones we're going to bet on and create companies out of are very well vetted, de-risked, and have a high probability of being profitable, not only for Inventure, but also for the customers. So it has to drive value for customers as well. So when you think about, when P&G is dedicating millions of dollars in developing the newest plastics recycling technology, they're not going to do that unless there's something in it for them too. How are they going to save money? So our 3 portfolio companies, the first one was PureCycle. That is a plastics recycling technology, and it focuses on a very particular type of plastic that's called polypropylene. And polypropylene is the most used plastic in the world. It's used in car bumpers, it's used in cups, cutlery, lots of stuff that's probably being used at your events. And before Procter & Gamble invented this technology, the market for recycled polypropylene was extremely limited. So the value of the recycled polypropylene, it would go back into like a park bench or a paint can. And while those are great next use applications for recycled plastic, it's not going to move the needle and drive the investment that's needed to be able to scale this technology like we need it for the 160 billion pounds of polypropylene that's used every year. And so P&G invented this technology, and it's a solvent-based extraction technology, which essentially means it's able to remove all color, odor, contamination, other plastics, and it renders a like-new, crystal clear recycled pellet that looks just like virgin resin that you would get from pulling it out of the ground, making it from pulling it out of the ground. So all of a sudden you have a recycled product that can go back in the high-value applications that you weren't able to get access to with the recycled product from before. So that was the first one. The second one is a company called Aeroflex, and this is what I'm here working with Cameron and AMA Pro Racing on, and this is what we call a innovative sustainable liquids package. And so what this does, this has 2 proprietary parts. There's the proprietary airframe, and so the airframe is what gives its rigidity, but also allows it to use what's called flexible plastic. So flexible plastic, that's going to be in pouches, baby food. You see it, use it every day. But with flexible plastic, it uses a type of plastic that's called low-density polyethylene, whereas today your quart of oil is coming in a type of plastic called high-density polyethylene. And so by switching to the low density, you're able to reduce your plastic consumption by up to 90% and still be able to package your material in a flexible package. So that airframe is the first piece. And the second piece, which is really, really interesting, is the self-sealing valve. So P&G invented the self-sealing valve, so it doesn't require a cap. You open it and then you squeeze it, and it has what we call precision dosing. So you're able to get the liquid that's inside the package into places without the use of a funnel. So airframe and the self-sealing valve, those are kind of the 2 money makers with this. So reduces your plastic by up to 90%, saves you on costs. You don't have your cap or your label. It's all in one package there. There's no molds. It saves you on footprint. It saves you by taking trucks off the road because you can get more product into the trucks. It's overall cost of ownership. By switching to Aeroflex, it's guaranteed to save you money on your bottom line. And then our third company is a company called Celsius. And Celsius is a data center cooling technology. So instead of just blowing cold air to cool your servers, and we heard a lot about AI and how AI is using more resources to be able to power these generative AI models. It's using more energy, data centers are running hotter, and we're running into how do we cool them down? And a Celsius is a closed loop solution that uses a dielectric fluid, and it sits on top of the server rack. And basically it takes that dielectric fluid and it evaporates it and then turns it back into liquid. And it cuts your electricity costs for cooling your data centers by up to 90%. So all of our companies that we've created so far, it has to demonstrate economic value to the customer.
All right, Cameron, first of all, you were a fan.
I need to follow that?
Yeah, you need to follow that. But first of all, you've got a future as a hand model. I'm just saying. That was good. That was great. All right, so we know this stuff works because you're a racer. You wouldn't be getting companies involved in using this unless it worked. That's how racing mentality works. But here's the question for you. How tough was it to convince people that this was a better way?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I met Rachel and one of her founders through our big brother NASCAR, and they kind of pitched it over to NASCAR and IMSA first at the big glass building in Daytona, where flat track's down the road, and in the small building. So we got invited to a couple of those meetings, and it was first for Pure Cycle. We understood the recycling thing, and that's what Rachel's actually going to do for American Flat Track. I think we could take the ball and run with it because we had a little bit more time, and we weren't the big giant like NASCAR and IMSA and how much they have going on every day. So first part on the Pure Cycle side, it makes sense for us when we come into the different facilities that we race at, many of the places that Flat Track's raced in here, bringing in a recycling program when all of our teams and riders and all the waste that we have, having a program with Rachel not only is helpful for the facility that we come in, leave it as we got it, which many of these places are pristine and beautiful, and also showing them the facilities a way of their recycling program. So that was part one. And again, the part two, this is why we're here, and we're going to be working the floor the next couple days. I've already pitched this to 2 or 3 companies that we work with. I'm always obviously the 2-wheel guy, so from NASCAR to IMSA, they're the 4 wheels. So I have a list of people, some that will be here, that see the value in this for sustainability as well as the revenue in it. And she's already actually got a couple of our lubricant partners and have already asked for some pricing. And I've actually gone to Aeroflex and kind of watched the whole process of how it works. It's pretty incredible. So I think that, this kind of product's a win-win, especially in the motorsports arena. I think they made this for the shampoos and the Tides and the detergents, Procter & Gamble for the house, but they've seen a real need in the motorsports arena for this. Again, just in the initial calls that she and I have had from motorsports and the detailing companies as well. So yes. It's funny because every call we have, as you say, Dennis, it's first, sustainability, okay, what's the bottom line? And, hence one of the companies already saying, okay, where's the pricing? And I think that they can show some good savings and good savings on the bottom line. So I think it's a win-win all the way around.
All right, Jess, talk a little bit about your new fuel solutions over at Hyperfuels and why this is great news for the racing industry.
Yes, thanks for that. So the fuel I developed 7 years ago with the help of the National Marine Manufacturers Association was to create an unleaded racing fuel for Mercury Marine racing that replaced the ethanol with another alcohol that would meet EPA requirements in national parks. I did that by moving away from what we call, I'm going to use some technical terms here, the hygroscopic ethanol, which means it sucks in water from the atmosphere, to a hydrophobic alcohol called isobutanol, which was also renewable, made from corn in Laverne, Minnesota, and in Kansas. And by doing this, I knew I was going to get 2 things. I was going to get a more energy-dense fuel. When I'm designing fuels for people who want high performance, that's strictly the market I'm in, they want the most energy-dense fuel that they can have because it saves them less space in the tank, more power out of the engine, so I'm creating a better fuel for them. At the same time, it was discovered that by using this heavier, more dense alcohol, which doesn't absorb water, won't mix with water, we actually created a better fuel that the engine liked better. With only 3% more BTUs, we were getting 13% increase in performance. So you would see that as mileage. When they first told me this, I didn't believe it. I went down to the racetrack, I filled up my truck and did my own test, 13% better mileage. I said, how is this? But that energy density, the engine loved it. And I'm just talking about a regular everyday car. Why did we develop this? You can buy a flex fuel vehicle, you know that. Can you buy a flex fuel lawnmower? Can you buy a flex fuel snowmobile? The people that funded what I'm doing, that's the engines that they make. Briggs & Stratton, Evinrude, Mercury, Yamaha, Suzuki. They needed this fuel. Why? Because as the government was pushing the move from E10 to E15, their engines can't handle that. They don't have an ECU that can flip and have an O2 sensor in that outboard engine or in that lawnmower. They told me they needed a fuel that could replace E15, and that's what we created. So not only are you getting a more sustainable fuel, because again, you're going to use less of it, right? That's sustainable. You're going to use a renewable product, the isobutanol, and you're going to have a more energy-dense fuel. But this fuel is also on-road approved. So for your tracks out there, I know sometimes you have a premium 93 that may not be road-worthy, non-road taxable product. I know in tracks in our area, pull fuel from Pennsylvania. It's an off-road fuel strictly, but now you can have a premium 93 at your racetrack that you can sell to the people on race day and for them to go away on race day evening, okay? So that's what I'm here to promote and to tell you about how you can become more sustainable. And at the same time, this fuel reduces carbon emissions by 30%. And that's the magic word to these OEMs, decarbonization. They want to see that you're reducing carbon. At the same time, we're reducing what we call evaporative emissions. You know, when I mix ethanol and gasoline together, I'm taking two very low carbon, low vapor pressure products, but when I put them together, I get a higher vapor pressure product. That's because they're polar opposites. When I use this other alcohol called isobutanol, I reduce the vapor pressure. In fact, it was reduced so much, I had to get the EPA to change the regulations that they took away the minimum RVP because I couldn't meet that anymore. So we had to make some changes to get it to you, but now it's available all across the country for all the racetracks.
My background is in science, so I geek out when you guys start talking about science. Would that be healthier for the engine, that it repels that water?
I can't tell you the damage, and mechanics out there can tell you the damage that water does with an ethanol fuel. It literally sucks in all the moisture and water until it completes the solubility and drops that mixed drink, is what I call it, alcohol and water. It's a mixed drink down to the bottom of the tank. It reduces the octane of the fuel by 3 octane numbers. So if you're 93, if you take out the ethanol, it's 90. So yes, this is a much better fuel for the engine and for the fuel system.
All right, I know you're going to have some questions, so get those hands up high. In the meantime, I have a couple of toss-up questions to throw out at you. So here's the question, and anybody can tackle this one that's on the stage. Why is sustainability so important in every industry, but maybe even more so in auto racing?
So I'll take that. So from Inventure's perspective, like I said, you know, we're seeing tons of technologies come through our screening process. I think we're seeing like probably 85% of the technologies that we're evaluating right now are all focused around sustainability. So obviously it's a very big meta trend right now, or mega trend, that lots of different companies are focusing on. And I think it comes down to when we think about sustainability, it's not just about the environmental sustainability definition, but it's how do we sustain this business for the next generation? And the environmental factor is coming into play. If you're not thinking about sustainability from an environmental perspective, that is going to hinder your long-term sustainability in general. So I think, you know, as a community, considering sustainability from an environmental perspective, a fiscal perspective, and just the longevity of it in general, it's very, very important.
All right, follow up on this, and Cam, I'm going to pick on you here. There's a lot of sponsors in racing, and you don't get to go race without the sponsors. Each one of these big companies, while we may decide that, you know, I don't want to be more sustainable, there's nothing in it for me, although we certainly learned that's not the case. But these big corporations need to check that box. How important is that as you talk to different sponsors, that you guys, as a series, are being more sustainable?
I mean, I think they said it earlier on the earlier panel, even with the street races and so forth. I mean, it's top of the mind, you know. But again, I think every partner brings it up. It's in every meeting we're in, pretty much. And again, I think that's what's so good with the products that they have. It is all along, because all the big guys that come in, or ladies that we talk to, it's all about, okay, sustainability is great and it's part of our kind of culture now, but what's the bottom line? What's going to cost me? And how do the numbers work out? So, but I think it's super important.
And Jess, how does the fuel side of this all work into that equation? Because if I'm a big sponsor and I'm supporting a racing series, it's kind of cool if I can say 30% less carbon emissions.
Audubon's here. Yes. When did I first do this? Back for the Jetta TDI Cup. Do you remember that? That was a great series, wasn't it? Excellent. What did we do? Jetta had a TDI Cup that they wanted to run, but they wanted to become more carbon efficient, reduce their carbon footprint, because they were paying for credits. So we teamed up with the National Biodiesel Board out of Missouri, and we created a synthetic diesel from natural gas, and we mated that with 5 or 10% biodiesel. They saved tremendously of their carbon credits. This was worldwide news for them, and they pushed it out there for the 3 years of that racing cycle. They loved it, and sponsors loved it. They loved being associated with that. We doubled up by putting biodiesel through pilot travel centers in their transports, so we could, again, drop their carbon numbers even more. What else did we do? Agreco was the provider of electricity at these sites. We put that same sustainable fuel in the generators. So again, they were able to crank down their carbon numbers altogether. You're going to hear a lot about sustainability, but you're going to hear more about carbon reduction. That's what these big major companies are interested in. And I can tell you from the conversations I'm having with OEMs, especially in Japan, they're coming after more sustainable fuel. So when I'm talking about here today, you're going to be hearing in the future, and you need to push forward to get your own sustainability developed before somebody forces you to do something you may not want to do.
And Dennis, and I also was going to say too, you know, I think that also it's sustainable, but it's also, I think that the sponsors and the partners that we're working with, it's also functionality. Because if you take this functionality, especially for the two-wheel world, you know, what do you always need most of the time when you're putting in your oils? You need the funnel. You don't need the funnel here. It's got the precision dosing. They can actually take this top right here and you know, you want it one squirt where you just push it and it squirts out. It'll all come out at one time, or you can have it to where the different pressure is made by these little pleats they put in here to microdose it and make sure that it's getting in the motorcycle. And she kind of made some Aeroflex no funnel needed t-shirts. So again, I think functionality that's offered to the customer and the end user is also very, very good.
And racing teams are notorious for losing their funnels, or not knowing where they put it, or having it get all dirty. That's a big deal indeed.
We've talked about emissions, we've talked about the efficiency of it and functionality. Let's talk about the Benjamins now, because when I think about, you know, eating clean or eating healthier or any of those things, it's cha-ching, 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 right? And that's where my head's at. What about cost? If I go this direction, does that mean I'm spending more money? And I'm not talking about maybe initial spend, but long term.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, and my answer is I think you can definitely make sustainable choices that are profitable for you. So for the Aeroflex example, again, on the...
He doesn't want to let that go and hand it to you. He's like,
Got to get a picture.
So not only does it reduce the amount of raw material that you're using in your packaging by up to 90%, but the cost of your molds, gone. You don't need them anymore. You can change your design overnight because it's just printed on a single layer of film, so you don't have to wait for lead time to redesign your package for whatever liquid you're putting into it, in this example, motor oil. No cap, no label, so you're cutting those costs out. You are able to save on footprint because you don't have boxes of bulky bottles sitting in your warehouse. And then you can get 10 times the amount of these quarts, the quart size of this, on trucks compared to the rigid bottle of trucks. So you're taking literal trucks off the road. So you're saving both on carbon emissions as well as the cost of having the trucks on the road. And then the big one that a lot of people forget about when we're talking about Aeroflex, but this package was actually designed by Procter & Gamble to be shipped standalone. So those Amazon packages that you get without the box, you could technically just ship this straight without any extra packaging, any bubble wrap. So all of those expenses gone, as well as all of the losses. If you go and look online of reviews of shipping liquids, whether it's oil, whether it's anything in a plastic rigid bottle, there's tons of unhappy customers because it's a huge mess when it arrives to their door and there's just, the product is no longer in there, and losses incurred to the company. So huge savings for your total cost of ownership by switching from the old way of liquids packaging to the new.
Just a follow up, and I'm putting myself in a track owner's mind frame. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be the one filling the packages, right? So if I am a track owner, what would benefit by pushing, if I'm the track owner and wanting to push, hey, use this? And I know that's kind of what you were alluding to as well, is kind of sharing it with your peers.
Yeah, so on that, I think with the track owners, that's going to be more of like a partnership, sustainable strategy to put in place, right? So going back to my previous life at Pure Cycle with the Pure Zero program, bringing in partners to plan what's being consumed and how can we work together to reduce our overall footprint. And that's my biggest advice to the track owners, is to engage a sustainability or a recycling expert. And I know tons of them. I'm happy to put you in contact with them. But the beauty of what they do is they bring in additional partners, whether that's Coca-Cola, whether that's other large brands that are actually going to invest in the programs to make them successful. One of the partners that I worked at with for a long time at Pure Cycle, it's a group out of Tennessee called iSustain, and they just did the recycling program at Dollywood. And so again, it's a partnership, right? So you need multiple parties coming together. So they brought in Keep Tennessee River Beautiful Coalition, they brought in Coca-Cola, and all together they were able to put in place this sustainable recycling program that's able to withstand time and not break the bank. So they're collecting everything from your water bottles, your cans, they're collecting cigarette butts. And so by putting the recycling program actually on the premise, they're able to generate revenue from those recyclables right there. So all of a sudden, instead of just having things go to the landfill, all of a sudden you're able to generate revenue from those consumed bottles that are being consumed at your venue. In addition to that, the other thing that I would give as advice is, especially when you have like large events, the value of those recyclables and being able to go back into a new product automatically goes up. So all of a sudden, you're not just selling plastic waste to somebody who can turn it into the next generation of water bottles, but it's special edition water bottles that were from the Daytona 500. So all of a sudden the value goes up. So I think, you know, partnership and getting creative and then maximizing the situation, there's lots of different ways to make it economical and sustainable. I hope that's helpful.
And on the fuel, for the track owners, the user of these fuels, the racers, will appreciate the performance. And this fuel is more expensive, but they'll be able to pay for it because fuel is a very low part of their overall budget. But as track owners, you have a lot of small equipment that you're running as well. How much do you spend on repairs for fuel-related issues while using an E10 product at your track? Because if you switch to this, you won't have those problems anymore. And for the boating world, I'm talking to people that are putting very expensive fuel into their boats. Why? Because each of those outboards, 2 to 3 to 4, costs as much as a Corvette engine. And they don't want to have to repair those because of ethanol. So they're willing to pay the extra price for this premium fuel so that they'll get a better performing fuel without the problems of ethanol.
All right, the old saying, change is inevitable except from a vending machine. So government regulations are coming. We're going to be forced to change whether we want to change or not.
Dennis, that was terrible.
I know, thank you.
It was so terrible, it was great.
And most are taking credit cards anyway, so that's only a joke for the over 45, over 50 crowd. But anyway.
Love it.
That's me. Anyway, So government change is going to carry us kicking and screaming into making changes that are more sustainable, less carbon. Seems to me, I'm not a very smart person, as witnessed by that joke, and witnessed by the artificial intelligence section earlier. But it seems to me, getting out ahead of this and making the change now, making a small investment maybe now to save money, but be ready for those changes that are going to be forced down our throat, seems like smart business to me.
Can I take that one? You all need to be watching what's happening in the aviation industry right now. The EPA has been trying to remove leaded avgas for years now. And those guys, the Pilots Association is pushing back hard on them all of these years. But at some point, they're going to be told what they're going to do. You don't want to be in that position. Diesel engines were losing market to natural gas. I brought them biodiesel as a way of making their petroleum diesel more green, more sustainable by using renewable fuel. You need to be doing what the Marine Association is doing by counteracting the effects of an E15 product that they know they can't put on their engines. By getting on the push side, they're showing that they can push this fuel into their existing fleet and decarbonizing and create a more sustainable use of fuel. They're doing that at each state's Congress, and they're doing it at the United States Congress. If you go look at what they're doing, the American Boating Congress, that was one of their big features this year, was to show them what they're doing to decarbonize their own fleet, existing fleet. You need to watch these things in the future.
And I got news for you folks. This change isn't just going to happen on the national level, it's going to happen state by state. And if you get out ahead of it, you're in better shape. So Cameron, asking you, again, the feedback that you've gotten from companies, has anybody said no?
No, 100% right now. It's been across the board. Again, it's very interested. They get the product when they see the product, when they get all aspects of it. But then again, okay, what's the cost difference or what's the savings? So I mean, but you know, again, we out of the box, we're hitting home runs. You know, it just makes sense. Mm-hmm. And like you said, we're getting ahead of this because sustainability is the top priority for all these companies.
And racers having less to store
100%
in their trailer.
100%.
That's huge.
100%. Yeah. And less waste at the facilities that we come into.
But yeah, just to echo what you already said, Dennis, you know, being at the table when these decisions are made, obviously a better position than it being, you know, mandated to you, as well as being able to influence, hey, maybe instead of being penalized for not meeting this, why don't we reward people who are ahead of the game and are forward thinking and, you know, trying to solve these problems in different ways. So I know we're already starting to see it in the plastic world. Certain states are starting to have the conversations. Is this extra fee for the single-use plastic? Is it going to go on the consumer? Is it going to go on the manufacturer? So those discussions are starting to be duked out. So, you know, always better to have a seat at the table when those conversations are happening.
All right, another loaded question, because outside of the auto racing media, I got news for everybody. The mainstream media does not like auto racing all the time. They love to try to find a negative story whenever they can, and so do some of the politicians that are around the country. It's good business to bash somebody that is not doing a better job at being more sustainable, promoting environmental awareness, all these things. Why should auto racing do a better job? Is it just about the bottom line, or is there value in being a good neighbor?
I mean, I think there's definitely value about being a good neighbor for sure. And, you know, I think, like to echo what she said, I think if we're, you know, kind of all get ahead of it, it's coming regardless. And again, it's the same thing. She said that, you know, it can be profitable if it's done right, you know, and you get the proper experts that are out there to help. So, what'd you say?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just say, like, having been immersed in the recycling world, like, there are so many organizations out there talking about recycling specifically because that's what my experience is in. But, you know, these groups, they want these programs to be successful. So, you know, having that call into the EPA, they're going to give you the list of, all right, here's all your resources. Let's drill down there. There's state recycling coordinators whose literal job is just to make new successful programs. So there are lots of resources that you can tap into. Again, my number one advice would be to engage an expert who can help you navigate all of that. There's even specialty organizations. There's a National Lubricant Container Recycling Coalition, whose whole job is to recycle oil cans. So we're seeing continued improvements in technology, so the amount or the different types of materials that can be recycled continues to increase. We're getting better technologies that are able to handle more contamination. We have, you know, the supporting organization, so getting kind of that partner who can partner with you to navigate that and connect you with the right organizations that are there to make your program successful. That's my number one advice to get started. So, yeah.
So for racing, if you want to get a sponsor, you're going to have to do what they want you to do.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want to wait for them to tell you. You need to be proactive right now in saying, here's what I'm doing for more sustainable, more recycling, to decarbonize my entire platform to offer it to you. Racetracks, Jeremy's back there. He knows what it's like to get the OEMs at his track. If you want to get the OEMs to the track, again, you have to be what they want you to be. And they're going to ask, but you may not hear when they ask. But if you can put that forward now, here's what we're doing for sustainable, for recycling, for creating more advanced fuels to decarbonize our platform, both on the track and in your own fleet. Imagine that. In your own fleet, if you could decarbonize most of your fleet right now by 20 to 30%, that would make a difference to those OEMs out there.
And Cameron, I would think you save a company money and become a good partner with them. That's a great way to get in their pocketbook to sponsor your series, too.
100%.
All right. Well, this was a fantastic panel. Rachel, final word.
Final word. I've said this a few times, but find a partner that can help you navigate. If you're interested in looking at what can I do, what's the low-hanging fruit to get started. I think sustainability in general is kind of an overwhelming, I don't even know where to start. There's so many different places I can, you know, get my head stuck in the sand. There's easy programs. Start with the plastic bottles at your venue. Put in a baler, start baling them and selling them, and make, you know, $1.30 a pound for all the plastic bottles. Like that's the first place to start. It's low-hanging fruit. And then use the resources that are available. And like I said, I am happy to put anybody who's interested, I'm happy to have a conversation on your specific needs and then connect you with any of the specialty groups that I talked about before. Really, really pleased to be here and happy to help however I can.
Cameron.
My final word is I found my expert and my partner. So Rachel's been awesome to work with. And again, I think it was easy to start with American Flat Track and the two-wheel racing. Again, our meetings have been taken very well by all the partners we had so far. We still have a lot more to go the next couple days. And I think what it's going to do, which we talked to the top brass at NASCAR and the four-wheel world, once they see kind of the traction we get, they'll pick it up in their series as well, and it'll just kind of snowball because it's good for all. And like you said, getting ahead of it, getting a seat at the table, and being proactive before they demand is kind of the way to do it.
Jess, bring us home.
I saved this for the last word for my buddy Dennis here. I'm from Texas. Has anyone been to Texas and been to a Buc-ee's? Guess who sells the fuel I've been talking about all afternoon? Buc-ee's. It's the Blue Holes, the ethanol-free fuel. It's the same fuel I've been talking to you about all day long. It has doubled their premium sales, not taken away from anything. And guess what? It costs more, but people are willing to pay. That's your secret we're going to take away.
All right, what did we learn from this panel? A lot, because we learned there's money in sustainability, so why not cash in? There's so many ways to cash in as well, but yeah, I like that idea of recycling plastic from a big event and turning that into a product you sell at your track. And I got news for you, folks. It doesn't have to be the Daytona 500 to have it your drivers are your local heroes. It would work even on that level as well. We learned that sustainability makes sense. Hey, it might be a buzzword to us right now, but saving 90% on your plastic and having a great hand model here at the show is amazing. But that saves you money on shipping costs. It makes it easier for your racers to have that product. Why not sell your oil in containers like that right there in your pit shop? On track. Makes a lot of sense.
We're taking orders now.
And energy density is very important in motorsports. Hey, I learned that. And Hyperfuels has come up with a better fuel. 30% less carbon emissions. There's companies, big companies out there that want to buy those carbon credits, so it makes a lot of sense to make money off of sustainability. Let's give them all a big hand.